Hello and welcome. We are officially on my second official live stream for the channel. My name is Austin, if somehow this happens to be your first time here checking out the channel. And I'm going to kind of just talk about a few random things as we kind of wait for a few people to get into the chat here and watch. So, first of all, this title for this one is Quaran-stream. And the reason I went with that is because technically I'm quarantined right now. I haven't been to work in about a week or so, and for circumstances I don't really need to go into too much detail on, I'm quarantined through Sunday. And so the beauty of being quarantined is I have had a ton of time to check out a lot of movies. Now, normally on this stream, what I would do, even though this is only my second one, is I would share all of the movies that I've been watching over the past month or so, give or take, depending on where I stopped in the last stream. But in the past month or so, I have watched about 35 movies, and that is a lot of movies to talk about. So I'm not going to talk about every single movie that I've watched over the past month. So I've compiled my list of the ones I would like to share about. Some of them are rewatches. Others, many of them are ones that I've watched for the first time because I took huge advantage of the fact that I am quarantined and checked out a lot of movies that I've been wanting to check out. I've had a running list for a while now of all the different movies and where they're streaming and where I can check them out. So finally, I've got that list dwindling down to just a few more until I'm fully caught up. And then I can finally get back into my catalog of movies that I have in my own collection and check those out. So thank you for joining me on this stream. I'm super excited to share about these because I just had so much time to watch movies. I love movies and I'm excited to talk about them, recommend them, because a lot of these ones I'm going to be talking about are on different streaming services because I haven't been watching a ton of stuff in my collection yet. So a lot of these that I'm going to recommend you can check out, and I'll do my best if I can remember where each of these are streaming to share that with you as well. So I think that about covers all of my announcements. This video will take the place of my normal video going up this week. Normally I would have done a traditional video that would go up this afternoon, but I wanted to do a live stream for this one just because it's been a while, it's been about a month. I wanted to kick out another live stream for you. So next week I will plan on resuming normal content as always, and we're going to be doing a Blu-ray haul for the month of August because summer is almost over and the month of August is just about wrapped up. So look forward to that coming next week. So first, let's jump into the first movie. This one I watched not too long after the Tomorrow War, which is the last one I talked about in the live stream for last time. So let me pop up my little header there. So The Empty Man. The Empty Man, let me hop over comments so I can catch those when they come up. So The Empty Man, I'm pretty sure is streaming on HBO Max right now. And this is one that came out last year, I believe. And it didn't do too great. I think the studio that released it, I don't remember their name off the top of my head, didn't quite market it very well for exactly what it was. They marketed it as more of a traditional horror movie. And it's definitely a horror movie, but it's very different than what a traditional horror movie would be. They marketed it as more of just in the traditional sense of what you'd come to expect from a horror movie to be released these days. And The Empty Man definitely is not that. It's a much more deep, a long ride, kind of a slow burn, thorough kind of exploration of what the theory and the myth is behind this empty man that the movie explores. And it has to do with like all kinds of stuff, like eventually you go into cults and just all this weird stuff. But it's really well done. And if you're looking for a new and interesting slow burn of a horror movie, if that's your thing, you're definitely going to want to check this one out. Like I said, I'm pretty sure it's streaming on HBO Max. So if you have HBO, check it out. I really enjoyed it. I had a really good time with it. I thought it was really interesting concept, a lot of cool themes to think about and consider after seeing it. The main character, I don't remember his name. He's not a highly popular actor, but I'd seen him in a number of other projects, and I thought he did a really good job, definitely one of his best performances. So that's The Empty Man. I really enjoyed that one, and that's one I definitely recommend. So next, this is a cool. So a number of these first ones are before quarantine stuff. These are just ones I checked out before I got quarantined. But I've been wanting to go back and watch some of the old Star Trek movies. Recently, I went and watched the Kelvin timeline Star Trek movies for the second or third time or so, I think, for depending on which movie it was. And I had not seen these movies for a long time. Wanted to check them out, kind of see if they held up. My brother got me one of them for Christmas, and because of that, I went and just got the other two, so I'd have all three. And I finally went and checked out those three. But then I was like, these are really cool. I want to check out kind of the old Star Trek and see kind of more from the roots of where it came from. So I checked out Star Trek the Motion Picture and Star Trek II The Wrath of Khan. And Star Trek the Motion Picture was beautiful. It was a beautifully shot movie, and the soundtrack was absolutely great. I think it was James Horner that maybe did the first soundtrack for that one, and it was great. But I didn't love the movie. It was okay, but it was a very, very slow paced movie, and it was sad. I'm ashamed to say this. It was the first movie in a long time that I actually fell asleep watching. I fell asleep for 10 or 15 minutes in the second or third act. So I'm ashamed to say I fell asleep in a movie, but gosh, that movie moved at such a slow pace at times. I just couldn't quite roll with it. But Star Trek 2, on the other hand, was great. I thought that really lived up to the hype. I really enjoyed it, had a lot of fun with it. And I didn't get a chance to continue any of the other Star Treks because they were streaming on Hulu for just a short amount of time. So I checked out the first two. I'm glad I at least got to kind of expose myself to some of the old Star Trek movies, and I really enjoyed them. So I'm glad I checked them out. I definitely want to continue with the series. From what I've heard, I think in general, the odd numbers are fairly mediocre as far as the old Star Trek movies go, and then the even numbers are really good. So next, I'll check out 3. I think there's 5 or 6 or maybe 7 of these movies. So eventually, at some point, I would like to go back and check those out. So before I continue on to the next one, we got a few people in the chat here I've noticed. So feel free to mention and share about any of the movies you've been watching lately. Like I said, I'm currently quarantined for a few more days. So any movie recommendations you got for something that's streaming, let me know, and I would definitely love to check it out. So be sure to share what you've been watching. If you have any recommendations for me, if you have any questions about the movies I'm talking about, feel free to throw them out there. I'd be happy to share. Now, the next one I want to talk about is a rewatch that I did recently, and that is The Raid. This is technically The Raid Redemption, I think is the official name for it, but this was my second time watching this movie, and goodness gracious, this is one of the greatest action movies I've ever seen, truly. And this movie is a perfect example of, if you are someone who doesn't really check out foreign films and watch them, you're missing out, especially if you're an action junkie. You're missing out on some of the best movies that have ever been made. And The Raid is a perfect example. It is an absolutely stellar action flick. This is one of those movies that is very heavily focused on the action. There's not a ton of setup and story with this one, but when the action starts pumping, not far into the movie, just within minutes, it's nonstop, excellent, escalating action, stakes, all that stuff. It's really good, really well done. I do want to go back and watch The Raid 2. Just got, like I said, a few more movies to catch up on, and then I'll be able to kind of pump into my own collection and start some rewatches on a lot of those. So I'm really excited to check out The Raid 2 again, because I had only seen each of these movies once before, but goodness gracious, like I said, The Raid and The Raid 2 are some of the greatest action movies we have received, and they're very recent too. There's such incredible authentic stunt work. You can totally see the passion that went into rehearsing these and all of the work that went into the preparations. So cool. So if you've not seen either of the Raid films, at the very least, check out The Raid Redemption, because it's just a nice, quick thriller action movie. I think the movie's only like an hour and a half, hour and 40 minutes long, and it moves at such a brisk pace with incredible action. It's going to keep you on the edge of your seat. All right, first comment in here, we got Pierre, Puerto Rico Movie Wax. What up? Hey, man, how is it going? I think I saw you in the comments last night for the movie collection battle over on 4K D-Ray's channel. So thanks for coming over and hopping into the stream. Excited to have you. Let's see here. Next. All right, I talk about Rurouni Kenshin all the time. So Rurouni Kenshin, the beginning. Now, this is a series that I've grown to love greatly over the past few months, and partially it started with the anime series that I checked out on HBO Max, and I loved the anime. I watched the first few seasons. I talked about this in the last stream, so I won't go on too long about it. But I talked about how I watched the fourth movie, the final, in the last month or so, and then this month they put Rurouni Kenshin 5, the beginning, which is technically kind of an origin story for Kenshin, and goes back to when he was Batosai, the Manslayer, and so. Really cool to kind of see back when he was someone who was a brutal killer, and just to see the action from a different perspective as someone who actually kills people. It was really interesting. And I think story-wise, it was definitely one of the strongest, and it gave an absolutely excellent ending and wrapping up to the story of the character. So unfortunately, you can only check out the fourth and fifth of the Rurouni Kenshin movies on Netflix right now, but I highly recommend you'd find somewhere. I know I bought the Blu-rays on Amazon for the first three. These are some of the best samurai and martial arts movies that are on just anywhere, any platform. So check them out if you can. At the very least, you can check out Rurouni Kenshin 5, the beginning. You're going to miss out on some stuff, but it is a bit of an isolating standalone story, so you'll at least get the idea of what these movies are about. And like I said, great action, really good story in this one, and it wrapped up the story of Kenshin and everything. Even though the last film, it's a prequel, it wraps things up so well, and I loved it for it. So really, really enjoyed that one. Let's knock off the caption for that. So my brother just hopped on. I wanted her to do the raid. Yeah, I can thank my brother Jeremy for introducing me to the raid films. He bought them at a Best Buy, I think, one time when I was home visiting Connecticut. And I think he had seen at least the first one before. So he grabbed them at a Best Buy, and we watched the first one together. So super thankful that he introduced me to those movies, because I love them, and I definitely recommend them to people going forward. Next, how many movies do you have in your collection? Let me check, because I actually wanted to do this, so I'm glad you asked. I'm up to 468 movies in my collection. So I've been growing fairly steadily. I usually add about 10 movies or so per month to my collection. So I'm coming up on 500. I'll probably hit 500 by the end of the year. Both of these shelves are just about full. I do have some other random shelving that has stuff like the MCU and the DCU on it, and then TV shows and DVDs. So I do have a third shelf that I can grow into should I need to, but I also will probably be needing another one at some point in the next year. So yeah, that's about where I'm at right now. 468 movies in the collection. All right, Aaron is Boss Level. Yeah, I know I've gotten recommended Boss Level a couple times. You were one of them. I heard through Mindy, as my brother-in-law Aaron, and I want to check it out. I just haven't yet. So I'm definitely going to look into checking that out soon. Hopefully, maybe today or this weekend I can check it out, because I've heard it's good. I think Frank Grillo is the main character in it. And also, what's his name? The guy who was just Fat Man and directed Hacksaw Ridge, Mel Gibson. I was just blanking there for a minute. I know, Frank Grillo and Mel Gibson are in the movie, and I've heard it's good. So I want to check it out. Next, let's move on. Okay, this one's really interesting. I think this one flew under the radar for a good while. So, and it's still not highly known. The only reason I knew about this one is because of a movie podcast that I listened to called Real Blood. So I highly recommend their podcast. Great stuff. They do really cool interviews with directors and actors and stuff like that. Really in-depth film exploration. So they were talking about this movie. It's a new documentary that just came out on HBO Max, and it's about Woodstock 1999. Now, I didn't even know there was another Woodstock. I thought the only Woodstock was in the 70s. I just don't follow that kind of stuff. And so I had no idea that there was another Woodstock in 99. There was one in the 80s too, I think. So actually, was it in the 60s, the first one? I don't remember. Like I said, I'm not into that stuff. So Woodstock 99, Peace, Love, Rage is a documentary that came out just a few weeks ago on HBO Max. And I checked it out just because I was really curious at the way they were talking about it. They said it was really well done. And goodness gracious, what a horrific event that took place. This documentary does an incredible job at looking at the event just from both the perspective that was that time period, as well as looking at it from our point of view now of all the horrific things that took place. This was an awful thing that happened, of all of the horrible, really just riots that kind of came out of this festival. I will warn you, there is some really disturbing kind of like violence and graphic things that they talk about in it that took place there, but they're done very respectfully for what happened in the events. And there's also a lot of nudity in it because there's a ton of it there, and you just can't get away from it. So if that's something that's not something you're interested in, don't watch it for those reasons. But I just found the entire documentary fascinating to hear about all of the things that took place, because I had no idea that something like this happened. So it was a really, really interesting documentary, a lot of information. I learned a lot from it. So I really wanted to check it out, or I wanted to recommend it because I personally learned a lot from it. I knew nothing about the Woodstock 99. I didn't even know there was a Woodstock 99. So I wanted to talk about that on the stream, even though it's one it was hard to watch because there's just all this terrible stuff happening, and you ask why, how did we let this happen? And so really interesting documentary if you want to check that one out. Oh man, you got like 3,000 plus. Yeah, I don't know if I could ever have a collection that big, just because I don't know. At that point, you got so much. I mean, I feel like I'll get to the point of being about 1,000, but who knows? Maybe I'll get to 1,000 and then think I could go bigger. So yeah, 74. Dude, you look 37. Yeah. So there's a lot. There's so many. I've just in the past couple of days, I've been adding a bunch of stuff to my Amazon wish list, because for a while I got to the point where I was like, okay, I just want to build up my collection to the point where I kind of have the back catalog of stuff that I want, and then I'll just collect movies going forward. And I almost got to that point and was ready to pretty much stop collecting back catalog stuff. But then I just started watching all of this other stuff through quarantine and other stuff, and just fell in love with even more and more stuff. So there's just the past few days, I've added a bunch of stuff to my Amazon wish list. And even though I thought about maybe stopping to collect the back catalog of stuff, I don't see that happening. So we're definitely going to just keep on keeping on and collecting. So, all right, we talked about Woodstock 99. Next, this one's really cool. I'm excited to talk about this. Let me pop that up there and get a drink for a second. So, Nightmare on Elm Street. I wanted to check these out for a while now. So over the past couple of years, I've been checking out more and more horror movies. And starting, I think around last year or so, right around Halloween, I checked out a number of horror classics. And the Nightmare on Elm Street series is one of the last of the kind of classic horror series that I needed to check out for the first time. So right now, as of a few days ago, I know for sure, the Nightmare on Elm Street collection is streaming on Peacock TV for free. So all you need to do is create an account, and you can watch movies for free with ads. And so I checked out the first three. The first one I thought was great. I really enjoyed it. Some incredible practical effects that went into just crazy stuff that Freddy Krueger is capable of and stuff. And I knew very little about these besides the fact that it's Freddy Krueger and he can kill you within your dreams, but you're safe when you're awake. That was about all I knew going in. And I really loved the concept. I thought there was some really interesting stuff there as far as kind of, face, like, in a way, like Freddy Krueger is definitely a demon, and learning the ways to fight and battle him, of like, unity together, fighting with your friends and stuff like that. I really enjoyed that in the first one. The second one was okay. It wasn't quite as good as the first one, but I was really excited to check out the third one, Dream Warriors, because I'd heard some really good stuff about it within the movie community. So I checked out the first three, as you can see below, and I loved the first one. Thought the second one was okay, and I really liked the third one too. The third one was really cool because it kind of brought back some characters from the first one, and it was cool to kind of see them kind of a little more grown up and how they're able to help more people who are facing the whole Freddy Krueger kind of monster. And so it's really interesting to see them work together to kind of fight against him and figure out the best ways to defeat him. So I really enjoyed it, and I just on the movie collection battle that I was talking about on 4K D-Ray's channel, they were talking about how much they really like Nightmare on Elm Street 4. And I was just going to stop at 3 just because I heard the first one, the first one's a classic, second one was okay, and then the third one's really cool. So they were talking about pretty highly the fourth one. So I do want to check that one out now. I know there's 6 of these movies, I think, and then there's the remake of the original that I heard wasn't very good. So Nightmare on Elm Street, if you have not checked these out and you're into horror, I checked out these as the horror classics. Like I said, they're one of the last ones I need to check out. And then I'm going to be talking about in a little bit here down the list, another horror classic that I checked out for the first time. So I see we got a couple comments over here. Let's hop back over. Yeah, box sets, they save a lot of room a lot of times. Sometimes you get the huge box sets that are kind of overcompensating and there's just all this extra really cool stuff in them, but they're not practical to keep on the shelf. Like, I mean, I have like it's behind my chair, so I can't get it. I have the Harry Potter 8-movie collection, and it's like, the size of 2 or 3 Blu-rays, but you got 8 movies in there. So I love stuff like that. And so any box sets that I can get to save space right now, like for a perfect example, I have all 8 so far of the Fast and Furious movies individually on Blu-ray. But once the final movie comes out, I think they're going to do 11 movies total. I'm going to get the box set at that point. I'll probably get like the 4K box set at that point, just because it's going to save me a ton of room. Because right now they're taking up like this much room on my shelf. There's a lot. 8 Blu-rays takes up a lot of room. So to be able to compress that down to the size of 3 or 4 even, that's saving a lot of room on the shelf. So I definitely love my box sets to be able to save space. Yeah, and then steelbooks, they're just a little bit bigger, so they take up a little bit more room. All right, okay, this is another classic. So with the recent Renaissance, as it's been called, we have the Brendan Fraser's just kind of coming back doing some awesome stuff. He just did No Sudden Move, which was a great movie by Steven Soderbergh, who did like the Ocean's movies. And I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's on my top 10 for the year so far. And so I loved that. Brendan Fraser had a fairly decent, significant role in the movie, and he was great. And I was like, you know what? With all this, I need to go back and check out some of the Brendan Fraser movies I hadn't seen up until this point. And The Mummy is probably his most iconic performance and role. So I checked that out. I think all 3 movies are on HBO right now. And so I watched the movie for the first time and loved it. Oh my gosh, I love this movie. I immediately added it to my Amazon wish list for the 4K. I don't think I'll go and watch the second and third one because they're not as well regarded, and people are like, yeah, I've only seen the first one in general. So I'll probably just get the first one and don't really feel the need to get the second and third. I know the second has a horrific special effects scene in the one, and then the third one just kind of flopped and wasn't as good. So I mean, at the very least, I may one day check them out just for Brendan Fraser's charisma. So if you do recommend checking out the second or third one, let me know, because they're on HBO, so I'll check them out if they're actually worth watching. But I loved the first one. He has such great charisma. He reminds me of like a Nathan Drake or Indiana Jones type thing, and I love it. So I had a great time with it. Some really good adventure stuff, pretty good special effects, I thought, for the time period. And then even the practical stuff. I just love when they take the effort to put the work into really good practical stuff as well. So I really enjoyed The Mummy. I did not even know there was a steelbook collection for The Mummy. I know there's a 4K set. I wonder, so there's a 4K and Blu-ray steelbook. That's really cool. I didn't know that. And so I'll have to see if I could maybe just get the first one on steelbook. I'd be curious if they had that. All right, we're done talking about The Mummy. Now let's talk about James Gunn's Suicide Squad. So Suicide Squad is pretty generally regarded as not that great. So we were all really interested and really excited for the new Suicide Squad movie. And so I really enjoyed James Gunn. I haven't seen a ton of his stuff outside the MCU, really. Actually, I don't really think I've seen any of his stuff outside the MCU. But really enjoyed the Guardians movies. I thought he was a great choice to continue with the Suicide Squad franchise. And I loved the movie. I had a great time with it. Really good action. I loved kind of the 80s war vibe that they went with for the action. I thought that was really cool. The opening scene is like jaw-dropping. I won't spoil anything here for what they do to really set the bar and your expectation for the rest of the movie. I thought it was great. Some of my personal favorite stand-up performances, obviously, Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn. She's great, as always. Such a perfect choice for that character. Idris Elba as, Bloodsport. I really liked him. He's definitely one of the more main characters of the story. So he has probably one of the more prominent arcs throughout it. And I really enjoyed his performance. I thought it was definitely one of his best. John Cena is absolutely hilarious as Peacemaker. I can't wait to see what they do with him in that HBO series that they're going to do as like a spinoff for him. But actually, one of my favorite characters, probably maybe right behind Bloodsport, if Idris Elba. I don't remember the actress's name, but I really liked the character of Ratcatcher too. I thought she was great. and she had really interesting backstory, really interesting arc throughout the movie. Her and Bloodsport in particular had really interesting on-screen chemistry as kind of like their friendship kind of grows throughout the film. So it's really interesting, and I really enjoyed it. I thought it was decent, great characters, a decent story. That's definitely the weakest element of the film, but I really did think it was what it needed to be. It was still okay, and so I enjoyed that enough. And then just absolutely great bonkers over the top violence action. So really good stuff there. Yes, I really want to go see Free Guy. I don't know if I'll have a chance to see it in theaters, but I do want to check that. I've heard it's one of the best movies of the year for a lot of people, and so I've heard it's really fun, really good action, really hilarious, and so I do want to check that one out. I am really happy for the new Spider-Man movie. I can't wait to see it. That trailer, once Dr. Octopus showed up in the end, I mean, we knew he was in the movie, but that still blew my mind when I saw that on screen for the first time. I was just like, yes, I love Alfred Molina. Spider-Man 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time, and so I can't wait to see Alfred Molina reprise his role. And it looks like we probably are going to be getting Willem Dafoe as the Green Goblin, and possibly we're getting Jamie Foxx as Electro, which is cool, and then possibly the Sandman and the Lizard again too. And so I'm really excited to see that, and I'm just really hoping that Marvel's not going to let us down and not include. I see you want to see all Spider-Man together. Yeah, I really hope we're going to get to see all three Spider-Man on screen, even if it's just for like one scene or half a scene. I just want to see them all again because it'd be so cool to see Tobey Maguire just in the suit again, and even Andrew Garfield. I thought he was really good as Spider-Man too. So I'm really excited for the new movie. I've actually randomly, just out of nowhere, felt the urge to go watch the Spider-Man animated series that was on in the 90s. I watched that like all the time, Saturday morning cartoons. And so I just randomly had this kick to go watch the Spider-Man animated series the past few days. So I'm just a few episodes into that show. I've just been watching it randomly. So I've really enjoyed that. So let's see, Suicide Squad next, Snowden. So this is one that's been on my Netflix queue for a while, and as far as I know, it's still on Netflix. I knew this is similar to like the Woodstock '99 that I was talking about. I knew next to nothing about this movie. I mean, I knew Snowden was someone who leaked a ton of information about the government and that they were watching and monitoring their citizens and stuff like that, but that was about all I knew. So I found this incredibly fascinating and terrifyingly relevant still to today, because I feel like unfortunately we, like, back then it was a big deal that we found out the government was monitoring people and listening in on just general conversations, emails, text messages, all that stuff. But I feel like today we just kind of accepted it, and it's really sad that we've gotten to that point. So this, looking back and going to this kind of when this all was discovered and found out and leaked, it was thoroughly interesting. I really was interested in it. So if this is something you're interested in, check it out. And it's Joseph Gordon-Levitt plays Edward Snowden in the movie, and he's great. This is probably one of my favorite performances of him. I'm not sure how he does it. I don't know how any actor really does it, but the way they change their voice just subtly to sound like the actual character they're portraying, because towards the end of this movie, you actually get a couple clips of Edward Snowden actually talking, and he sounds exactly like him. So it's mind-blowing. I love Joseph Gordon-Levitt's performance as Edward Snowden. It's a fascinating story of hearing his journey kind of throughout working for the US government. He started in the military, moved into some intelligence stuff, all that stuff. So it's really interesting seeing his journey throughout all of that, and then seeing kind of how he got to the point where he felt it was his responsibility to release that information to the public. So it's really fascinating stuff, and I really loved that movie. So that's one I definitely would probably like to add to my collection at some point. Okay, I need another drink of water. So we're I didn't know, we're not talking about They Live yet, a little bit later. So twins. This is a movie I'd heard some really good stuff about. So this is I think 70s or 80s comedy from back in the day of Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito. And I'm not really someone who's followed Danny DeVito's career too much, But this was on Peacock TV, so you can watch it for free with ads right now. And it's one I've been wanting to check out. I've heard it's just a really funny movie, and goodness, this was such a charming, just fun comedy. I had such a great time with it. This is one of the movies I was talking about, added it to my Amazon wish list after watching it. I loved it. Had such a great time with it. It's so funny. It's just so funny. And seeing Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito's kind of on-screen chemistry together is so good. I know this movie critically was kind of panned and not really well received and stuff. So it's interesting that this movie critically didn't do that great, but audience-wise, people loved it. I checked out like the Rotten Tomatoes stuff for it. People had a great time with it. And from what I've heard, this is one of the movies, if not the movie, that Arnold Schwarzenegger made the most money off of on the back end of money after the movie was released, the residuals that he got from that. So it's really interesting. I think he knew what they had, even though critically it didn't do great. I don't know what it did box office wise, but like opening weekend and stuff, but the movie made him a ton of money. You can tell they're just having such a great time. It's such a fun story, and I just really, really thoroughly enjoyed it. Next, we got, I didn't even plan this, a few classics that we're going to be talking about next. So no more comments at the moment. So let's move on next to, I talked about another horror classic that I checked out for the first time, and that is Black Christmas. Now, this is one that has, I know very, very little about this franchise. So if anyone knows more about it, please fill me in. This is one that there was a remake of, I think, a few years ago, and it was pretty much hated universally. I've heard it was terrible. So, but this one is very highly regarded. But at the same time, from what I've heard, it's kind of flown under the radar over the years, and not a ton of people knew about it, or at least it wasn't as widely known as something like Halloween or Friday the 13th. Not as much of a just huge fan base, but it's still very well regarded. And it had a lot of similarity that you can see inspired, especially to me, the Halloween movie that I really checked out. I checked out for the first time last year and really enjoyed. So I thought this was really good. I won't spoil anything, but it kind of the setup for it, if you've not seen it, since it's not as widely known and popularized. There's a delivery here, so if my dog goes crazy, I apologize. So the setup is essentially it's right before Christmas break in a sorority house, and all the girls are starting to leave for the holidays. And the serial killer, he's going to start barking. They pulled in. So the serial killer breaks into the house and starts one by one picking off these girls and stuff like that. So it's really cool, really interesting. The serial killer stuff is really legitimately scary. It's really cool, and I loved it. So I'm really interested to check that out. Yeah. Hold on a sec. All right, sorry about that. He hates delivery drivers like most dogs do. So sorry for that interruption. He's pulling out, so he should only be a little wired for another minute or two. So Black Christmas is really cool. I really liked it. They do some really cool stuff with the serial killer that really definitely heavily inspired, I think, from like Psycho, and inspired the killer for Michael Myers, I think, in the Halloween franchise. So really, really cool stuff. If you've not seen this one, like I said, this one's also streaming on Peacock TV. So you can check that one out for free with ads. All right. So, quick question. What do I think about the new Spiral Saw? I've only just got into the Saw franchise. I never really was interested in the whole kind of torture porn stuff that franchise is known for. I did check out the first Saw movie because they put I think most of them, or at least the mainline ones on HBO. So I checked out the first one because a friend of mine recommended it to me. He's like, no, the first one's actually a really pretty good movie. And my brother just texted me and said his dog heard Calvin and now she's upset she can't see him. So I've only seen the first Saw movie, so I don't know if I'll ever watch the rest of them. But I've heard the Spiral was actually pretty entertaining. So I don't know. Is the Saw franchise worth kind of like randomly hopping around in, or do you have to watch them sequentially to understand the franchise? All right, the delivery driver's gone, so he should be quiet now. So yeah, feel free to let me know. Let me know that. Okay. Yeah, Netflix just added a new Witcher movie. I don't know if it's a movie or if it's a series. I do want to check it out though because I love The Witcher, and their season 2 is coming out in December. So I do want to check that out. So I heard they were doing a series. I didn't know it was already out on Netflix, so I'll definitely have to check that one out. I don't know if it's straight up done in the style of anime or if it's just like animated. So I would be curious to check that one out, especially while we're waiting on season 2 because I can't wait for season 2. I do need to watch it all apparently. So if they're still on HBO, I'll check them out and see if I like the rest of the movies. Okay, this one. So this is a really cool one I want to talk about too. So They Live. This is, speaking of horror and speaking of Halloween, John Carpenter. This is a John Carpenter action movie, and I checked this one out for the first time, also on Peacock TV. I went on Peacock and basically just found a ton of movies that I wanted to check out. So this is one you can also watch for food ads. But sneak peek for next week's Blu-ray haul. I loved the movie so much. After I watched it that night, I went and I ordered the 4K on Amazon. So I loved it. I thought it was so much fun. It's such a interesting concept that is terrifyingly relevant to today. It's so interesting of the whole concept of this being. There's these beings that live here on Earth that look, or at least to our eye, just like us, unless you wear these specific sunglasses that let you see them for who they really are. And they're basically controlling us and trying to keep us in a state of like sleep that we are not aware of. And all of their marketing and all that, like they're behind the marketing of all these huge big company products and stuff like that. So it's just like really, really interesting concept. And I thought it was a really entertaining movie. I had a ton of fun with it. There's some really cool, just, over the top 80s action. Like I love 80s action movies. They're so cool. So I loved the movie that much that I just went and bought the 4K right after checking it out. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, the best ones. Yes, I think my friend who recommended I check out at least the first Saw movie, I think he said that maybe the third and fourth one were okay. So I'll have to check out at least a couple of the other ones and just see if they work for me, because I try to give every movie its own chance. All right, we're wrapping up. We just got a few more movies I'm planning on talking about here. So this is one I really, really, really wanted to talk about because this was only the second or third time I had seen this movie. But I watched a ton of film analysis stuff, so I knew very well the movie of Jaws, but I didn't have it in my collection. And if you're into collecting, I think, I don't remember if it was this year or last year, they just came out with Jaws on 4K. And holy crap, the 4K remaster transfer for that movie is absolutely gorgeous. That is the first 4K movie that I've watched, and I've been watching 4K movies for about a year or so now, that I immediately noticed and really felt there was a significant difference in watching the 4K. Obviously, the one I switched to 4K for is Lord of the Rings, and I noticed that. So that was the first one of the first ones that I watched that I noticed a difference. This is, I guess I would say, probably the second most significant difference that I noticed in the 4K remaster. And they did a phenomenal job with this movie. Jaws is an absolute classic. Even if you haven't seen the movie, Jaws. And so if you've not seen this movie and you have 4K stuff, get the 4K. You can get it for only $15 on Amazon. And the transfer, like I said, is gorgeous. It looks phenomenal. You can still, obviously, it was recorded on film, so you can see the film grains and stuff, but goodness, it looks like the movie was made today. That's how good the transfer was. They went and extensively repaired a lot of the original, I think celluloid film is what it's called, and they painstakingly went like frame by frame through a lot of the scenes, repairing any damaged film areas. The audio track is beautiful. The soundtrack never sounded better. The audio track sounds great, and I loved it so much. You can see it from the first frame. There's a huge difference and an improvement over the regular Blu-ray or streaming quality, whatever you may have watched before. But I've almost wanted to go watch it again just because it looks that good, just to be able to see it again, because the transfer looks that good. So if you've not seen Jaws in 4K and you're into collecting and do 4K stuff, check out the Jaws 4K. I can't recommend it enough. And if you get it, the $15 one, I can reach this one, so I'll show you. It's going to be in this month's Blu-ray haul. There's a beautiful lenticular, like 3D looking cover. It comes with a booklet that has like a bunch of behind the scenes facts about the restoration process they went through, the kind of legacy of the Jaws movie. It comes with the 4K, comes with the Blu-ray. There's a bunch of bonus features. Really great set for only $15. So I highly recommend that one if you are into the franchise at all and haven't gotten this one yet, or if you want to check out the Jaws movie and don't have it in your collection yet. All right, looks like you might be heading out. Thank you for joining the stream. I really appreciate it. Obviously, I'm fairly small as far as channels go, and I've just started doing live stream stuff. So I'm happy for anyone who's willing to hop in for any amount of time into the live stream. So you have a great rest of your day. I'll see you next week's video. All right, I'm not done yet. So I got 2 more movies I want to talk about. So I'm not going to put it up on screen yet. I'm going to tease it a bit. So another classic, not necessarily because it's really old, horror franchise that I watched sometime last year I started, is the Scream franchise. So I watched Scream 1 through 3, and they were on, what streaming were they on? I don't remember. They were on one of those like really small, more obscure streaming services that you could watch. I think it was Vudu. You could watch for like free with ads. And so I watched the first 3 Scream movies last year, and no, it was earlier this year, I think. And I thought they were really great. I loved the first one. I love the second one just as much. One of those perfect examples of a really good sequel. So that's awesome. The third one was okay. I still enjoyed it, but it was a little too on the nose, self-referential, because if you don't know, the Scream franchise very much kind of exploits its genre of being a slasher and leans into it acknowledging that it knows what it is. So it's very self-aware. And I think the third one just went a little bit too much into that self-aware territory. Still an enjoyable movie, but if you know from my Blu-ray hauls, I just got Scream 4 last month. And I wasn't sure if I was going to watch it right away, wait a little bit, or just wait until Halloween, October, and watch it in there. But I already kind of have planned out what I want to do in October for the channel. So a little tease there. I know what I'm doing. It's going to be some really cool stuff. But so I just went, and since I'm quarantined and watching a ton of movies, checked out Scream 4. And I loved it. I thought it was great. I thought it really revitalized, not that the franchise needed it necessarily, but the fact that the franchise started in the 90s and this is kind of like a 2000s revitalization of the franchise. I thought it did a really good job. There's some really interesting stuff that they bring in as far as new characters. They still have all of the old school original people from the older movies in it, but they really revitalized it well. And I wanted to check it out because I'm really excited for the new Scream. I think they're just calling it Scream for Scream 5 that's coming out in January. So I wanted to check this one out, obviously, before that. And this, not that I had low expectations for this one, but whatever average expectations I had for the movie, it surpassed them. So I really liked it. And I really recommend checking out Scream 4 if you've not, if you're only like an original trilogy person or something. I thought Scream 4 did a really good job kind of bringing it into the somewhat modern age. I mean, the early 2000s isn't modern to today's standards, but really, really enjoyed that. So if you've not checked out Scream 4, definitely recommend it. Last one, I just watched this yesterday, I want to recommend, and that is Last Action Hero. This is one of Arnold Schwarzenegger's most underrated movies. I got this a few months ago. I found it at a used store right around the time the new 4K remaster came out. And this was just a cheaper option, and I didn't have the movie in my collection anyway. So I was like, I'll just go with the normal Blu-ray, maybe one day upgrading to 4K. So I watched it yesterday, and it was the first time I'd seen it since I was probably a teenager. So it'd been probably 10 years since I'd seen the movie. And gosh, I'm getting old. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. This movie is so cool. The thing about this movie, similar to the Scream movies, it knows what it is and it leans into it. But the cool thing about it is it's essentially the story of this boy who's absolutely in love with this Jack Slater action movie franchise. And Arnold Schwarzenegger stars as Jack Slater in these movies that he loves. And so the new one's coming out. He gets an early release for this old theater that he goes to, and this guy gives him this supposedly magic ticket, and he doesn't know really what it does. And partway into him watching the movie, he gets sucked into the screen, and he's in the movie. So the movie, he goes into it knowing it's a movie, but Jack Slater, played by Arnold Schwarzenegger, believes himself to be a real person, a real character. So the boy is trying to convince Arnold Schwarzenegger's character of Jack Slater that he's a character and this is a movie. And so because the boy went into the movie a little ways into it, he has some more context than Arnold Schwarzenegger does. So it's all this over the top, awesome action, really cool like mob stuff that's going on. And they're just working together to figure out how they can beat it all. So it's a fun, over the top action movie. Definitely ahead of its time as far as the concept. I think that's why it's fairly underrated and not as widely regarded as an Arnold Schwarzenegger movie goes. But I love this movie. I have a great time with it. Like I said, this is only the second or third time I'd seen it, but now that I had it on Blu-ray, I wanted to check it out. So I thoroughly enjoyed it. I had a really great time with it. If you've not checked out Last Action Hero and you're a fan of Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's probably, if not one of my favorite action movie stars. So I love his stuff. I've seen most of his movies. He was the most watched actor that I logged movies for watching last year. I caught up on a lot of his classics like Commando, The Running Man, and stuff like that. So if you've not seen Last Action Hero, if that's a gap in his filmography that you've not seen, check it out, because Last Action Hero is a really, really great time. So that's all the movies I have to talk about in this stream. If anyone has any last questions they'd like to throw up there, feel free to do so. This is shorter than I expected. Last month's stream went for about an hour, and this one only 45 minutes. So I went much faster than anticipated. I guess maybe we could have talked about all 35 movies I watched. I'm halfway through Rango right now, so I'm about halfway through that one. That's the what's his name, Johnny Depp movie, the animated one where he plays the lizard. So I'm halfway through that and enjoying that right now. So I'll probably finish that one up later today. I think also today I'm going to watch Nightcrawler, the Jake Gyllenhaal one. It's one I've been meaning to watch for a while. I watched it for the first time a couple years ago, loved it, bought the Blu-ray, haven't watched it since I got the Blu-ray. So I'm really excited to check that one out. It's one of Jake Gyllenhaal's best performances. We do have a question. Thoughts on Shang-Chi and the Eternals? I can't wait for Shang-Chi. I'm really hoping I can go see it, if not opening weekend, the following weekend. So I've heard great things about it. I love martial arts movies. If you know me, you know me. I love martial arts movies. So I've heard the martial arts stuff is excellent. Some of the best action inside of the MCU. So I'm really excited to check this one out. And I really hope it lives up to the hype that's kind of been built around it of just really changing the MCU going forward as far as the inclusion of Asian culture in cinema, because there's so many great movies that come out of their countries and stuff. So I really hope that this really opens the doors for that. And then as far as Eternals goes, I'm really excited for that too. I think I'm kind of nervous that Marvel's teetering on possibly delaying it or putting it on Disney Plus based on Shang-Chi's performance, which I don't really think is right. But I understand it's not in my control. It's not my decision to make. But I'm excited for Eternals as well. I think it's going to be really cool to delve into the more cosmic side of the Marvel Universe. If you know me, you know I don't follow the comics very closely. I'm more the movie guy, aside from a few characters like Spider-Man and stuff here and there. So I don't know a ton about the cosmic side of Marvel Comics or even the Shang-Chi side of that kind of thing. So I'm really excited for both movies. I'm glad they're coming so soon. I mean, it's really nice to be having Marvel movies again. We got Black Widow, and now Shang-Chi's coming out in just a couple weeks, and then the Eternals a little bit later. So I'm excited for both of those. Definitely going to check both of those ones out. So as I mentioned, that'll wrap up probably the live stream if there's no more questions or anything for this month. Again, look for this coming again next month. We're going to be doing, because I want to do these once a month where I'm just talking about the movies that I'm watching so I can recommend stuff to you and you can recommend stuff to me and I can answer any other random questions you guys have. So thank you for checking out the live stream here. Like I said, Blu-ray haul coming next week, and I have pretty much through October planned out as far as content goes and some really exciting stuff coming. So thank you again for checking out this second official live stream for the channel as I'm wrapping up my quarantine this weekend. Thank you for watching. That'll wrap things up for today, and I'll see you in the next one.